We'd like you now to meet Dr. Evelyn Callas. Dr. Callas is very well known in Marin County. She's a new member of the Marin Women's Hall of Fame, and certainly rightly so. She was the second pediatrician on the staff at Kaiser Permanente Hospital in Marin. She was the fourth doctor on that staff, and she, I guess, has taken care of how many children would you suppose? Have you figured that out, Dr. Callas,
No.
over these years?
No, couldn't possibly make the attempt. Enough so that in the last 10 years of my practice, most of my practice was made up of children I took care of.
That must be kind of a nice feeling.
It is, except that you recognize the grandmother much more than you do the mother.
You're from this area.
Right, I was born in Glen Ellen, in Sonoma County, on the Jack London Ranch, actually.
Right. Right on the ranch?
Oh, yes, yes.
Tell me about your parents and your family and the beginning of Evelyn Callas.
My father was a small farmer in Sonoma County. My family came there in the early 1850s and took up property out on the Russian River, and we've been there ever since and still are. My mother's family is from Massachusetts, but she grew up in San Francisco. She was born in Massachusetts and grew up from early infancy in San Francisco.
So she's essentially a part of this community, too, a native of the area. Your mother was very important in your life, wasn't she?
Yes, I think so.
Maybe
mothers are very important in general, right?
Yeah.
No pediatrician could ever underestimate the importance of a mother.
Right.
Right. But she was a very vital and extremely intelligent woman with a lot of striving in her life, and she was denied a formal college education, which she got by going to night school and summer school after she was a teacher. She graduated at the age of 57 from San Francisco State, summa cum laude, and valedictorian.
That's marvelous.
It was terrific.
Oh, what a nice story.
But she also was bound and determined that the kids would go to college. She didn't care what we went and what we graduated in. She just wanted to make sure we went to college. So that's probably why I was one of the first in my father's side of the family to go to college.
But you still were a beginner, a pioneer. But you didn't realize it at that time that you were pioneering, did you?
Oh, I don't think I considered it pioneering. I just thought I was lucky to get a job north of the Golden Gate Bridge.
Yeah.
That's where I wanted to be. I also wanted to practice in the Kaiser Permanente kind of practice system.
Why?
I had the experience and first of practicing a year in Southern California with them. They offered me a job when I finished my residency to come as a temporary physician for a year. No questions asked, bring your stethoscope and be able to make enough money to move out of Los Angeles and back to Northern California. And realized that this is the way I wanted to practice pediatrics, because there was no economic barrier between me and my patients, or between my patients and the care they needed. That was extremely important in pediatrics. For a pediatrician who by definition practices with poor people, young people with kids, to be able to have complete freedom of giving all of the care a child could possibly need without impoverishing the family is a great freedom indeed. And I have appreciated it ever since I decided to practice this way.
What was your schooling like in Glen Ellen?
Well, I didn't go to school there. I was just born there.
Oh, all right.
That's my only romantic part of my life, was I was born on the Jack London Ranch. Actually, my family was staying there. My grandmother was friends of the London family. They were staying there during that winter. My father's actually a foreman on a ranch out by Jenner. But during the winter months when I was expected, they moved there for the occasion, actually. Then my family built a house on my grandfather's property in the Russian River, and my father took up farming along with his father the rest of his life. So I went to school on the Russian River. I always laughed because I had, at least in my middle grammar school years, I sort of had a cinch on it. The school was Reidenauer School. The teacher was Beatrice Reidenauer.
Your mother?
My mother. On the board of trustees was Robert Reidenauer, my father. The property for the school, the land for the school, had been given by my great-grandfather to the community. There were two main settlers in that area, the McPeaks and the Reidenauers, and the McPeaks somehow drew the option to give the land for the cemetery, we got the school.
You got the school. That's much
And my
nicer.
grandfather and father and I all went to that one-room school. It was in existence until quite recently. So I went to a one-room grade school there and then subsequently in northern Marin County, and I graduated from grammar school in Estero Creek School in West Marin, just across the line from Sonoma County, where my mother was teaching for some time there.
You were there with students who were older and then younger, and did that help you, you think?
I don't think it helped or hindered. Actually, it was really like having a private tutor in a large family. We had one teacher, 8 grades, and a maximum, I think, any school I went to, of about 16 kids. It was very hard to work up a baseball game. But
Yes.
other than that, we got, of course, a lot of individual attention, a lot of independent study, because the teacher had to arrange things so the little ones were doing this while the bigger ones were doing that. I went to Anley High, and this was, of course, war years then. And the school was, again, quite small. I think there were about 100 kids in the class, 400 in the whole school. And it was sort of automatic to go on to Santa Rosa JC, which was probably the best part of the education I could have gotten. And I believe firmly in the junior college system. And I think that the opportunity to go to junior college is the making of most of my family.
Why is that?
Because I gave a very broad education with very little money. We didn't have any money. We didn't know it. We were poor but didn't know it. We weren't suffering anything, but we certainly didn't have any cash money. I got a broad education with excellent teachers and opportunity to take any kind of class I want, and I took them all. I took everything from anthropology right on down to zoology. I took political science, I took German, I took philosophy. I was terrible at philosophy. I was very young and I didn't have any idea what was going on in philosophy. I took every English class they had, and among other things I took biology. I had done well in biology in high school, so I took biology at JC and found out that's what I did best. That and chemistry, and so that sort of added up to pre-med.
I was just going to say, that sounds to me as if you're working exactly in the direction that you finally ended up.
Well, it wasn't exactly planned that way. Actually, what happened, I was going to JC and I was taking all these classes and having a fine time. And I was doing well in biology and I was doing well in chemistry. And my aunts kept asking what I was going to be when I grew up, sort of thing. And as I said, I was the first one in that orbit to go to college, and I had to find an answer that would satisfy them, you know. Well, I found out that if I said I was a pre-med major, they all quieted down.
You've had this opportunity, or had taken the opportunity, to have a general kind of education. It hasn't been just isolated in a little narrow groove.
Yeah, that wasn't exactly planned. Actually, I don't think anything much I ever did was really planned. It's probably just as well, and it would have been, the outlook would have been too formidable to go on with, you see. But since I didn't look ahead very far, I didn't get scared, so I kept right on going.
Yeah, now that's interesting. What do you mean when you say you might have, if you'd have known all the things that might have happened, you might not have gone ahead?
Well, I mean, I didn't know anything whatever about being a doctor, for instance, but here I was a pre-med major. I'd never been inside a hospital. I'd practically never seen a physician in my life. We didn't have any in the family except one we'd married in, and I didn't know him particularly well, or even at all. I had no idea how much this would all cost or how long it would last, and I really didn't seriously inquire, just as well because I couldn't possibly have afforded all of this. But I managed to get through it all anyhow.
Yeah.
So lack of forethought got me quite a long way. It's that and procrastination. It's cured a lot of things.
Yeah, that's marvelous, because you weren't afraid of it because you didn't envision.
I didn't research it well enough to be afraid of it.
Yeah,
Let's put it
all
that
right,
way.
okay. So you went. Why did you go to Los Angeles or down south to go to school for your
I'm
med
embarrassed
training?
to tell you that.
Well, maybe
because
I
it was a
shouldn't
very
ask.
foolish reason. It wasn't foolish. He was about 6'1", had dark hair and blue eyes, and he was going to go to University of Southern California, and said, "Why don't you come too?" I had never heard of the University of Southern California, but anyhow, if he was going, I was going.
Yeah.
He went to dental school.
I thought you were going to say that you later married him, but
No,
you didn't
my husband's
marry
a
him.
pediatrician.
I know
And he's
that.
short with brown eyes. Day one of medical school, you meet in the anatomy dissection room, and That's sort of the baptism of fire or something when you start medical school, is meeting your cadaver you're going to dissect. And you have to be divided up into groups. And in our school at that time, they didn't set you off alphabetically. They still let you all mill around in there, casting kind of scary eyes at the sheeted people that you were later going to be cutting up, and sort yourselves out into a group. Well, when everybody got sorted out, there was one shy little guy left over in the corner, was kind of left over. So he joined our group. And that's where I met my future husband, over our cadaver.
You had children while you were still in medical school, no?
Well, just barely. My first child was a little bit late in arriving, so I had him 11 days after I graduated.
Okay. You juggled from the beginning your career and your family.
Well, the key to the whole thing was the children's grandmother, my husband's mother, who was had been widowed for many years. At that time was just retired from her work and came to live with us and took up managing my household. Anytime you put 3 women doctors together, their first thing they start talking about is how are you managing and who's taking care of the children. And those of us who had a living grandmother doing it were the most lucky of all. On the other hand, not everyone is as fortunate as I was in having not only an effective and competent grandma to take care of the kids, but one who worked well with me and with whom the relationship was good. And then a lot of grandmothers at this point have their own responsibilities.
Yeah.
I have to care for great-grandma, who is no longer competent to care for herself, and my husband and my household, and I'm not free to take care of my children's children. Right now I have my husband and my mother-in-law, who is now 103 and has to be cared for. So I have elder care responsibilities now. And in the interval before this, there were other elder care responsibilities, which are now a serious need for the attentions of the grandmothers of our population, who are, as some people are calling them, sandwiched in between the needs of their children and the needs of their parents.
And the needs of their parents.
I think one thing we're moving toward that's going to be productive is we're moving toward a more Europeanized idea or social attitude toward the needs of bringing up the next generation.
Like what?
In supported child care, parental leave, job security during maternal leave. There are a whole host of approaches to this that are prevalent in European societies, of which the Scandinavian societies are the most advanced. They have to be, however, socially supported. And Sweden, for instance, has an enormous panoply of social benefits available, supported by most of the individual people's money. So their take-home pay is pretty small, very high taxes. But it does form the basis for forming a stable, well-related upbringing for the children, which is the basis of the next generation in our society's progress. So,
you have been recognized by the state of California for your efforts in legislation which gave doctors, I'm quoting now, the ability to more effectively document child abuse. Now that wasn't really political, but it had to...
no, actually it wasn't. It was a matter of seeing a need and proposing it through our lobbyist, to one of the assembly people to propose. It was a very small little teeny piece of legislation. The issue was I was reading a journal and realized that in some states it was doctors were permitted to take photographs of children's injuries without parental consent. Something that was not available in California at that time. And the problem is that documentation of an injury has to be done then. And trying to do this and obtain parental consent was kind of self-defeating. It got in the way. And so I inquired of the right people, how can we get this a law put through so that we can do this? And everybody cooperated very nicely, and we got the help we needed, and we did get passed. It was subsequently that little
Tiny bit of
ruling
yeah.
was incorporated into the fairly recently revised child abuse reporting statute, so it's all now in one law, but at least it got in there.
The field of child abuse is wider than just physical injury, too.
Oh, yes.
And we get into narcotics, into abuse of babies before they're even born. It's very discouraging when you read the headlines and read the stories in the national news magazines and all about what's going to happen to our children. Where are we going with the family and the children? Big subject these days.
Yeah, yeah, and it is indeed a very concerning one, too. But our society has faced concerning problems in the past and will in the future. And I think we have a population that's much more able to understand what's going on than it has been in the past. But it's not a pretty picture looking ahead. We have serious diseases rampant among us, for which we have neither preventions nor cures or vaccines and so on. But we've made a lot of progress. We have vaccines we didn't have before.
True.
I'm telling my students now, I'm teaching at UC now, I'm telling them how many diseases I've moved from the file that was labeled unknown cause into specific categories, and some even with specific preventions and vaccines and treatments that we didn't have before.
Children and parents must love coming to visit you. I sound like a commercial for you or for Kaiser Permanente or something. But you have this nice, easy, comfortable approach to things.
Well, I think it is really it's a pediatrician's job to make people comfortable. Parents, when they bring their children to you, are inevitably worried, concerned, and sometimes fearful, but at least confused, even if they show up with a normal, healthy newborn. And I think the best pediatrician is the one who can make parents comfortable and still maintain the edge of being able to get a parent to shape up to style when they're not doing what they should for the child or not looking at what they should be looking at. I'm trying to teach my residents now at UC how some of the techniques of being able to allay a parent's fears and at the same time make them cognizant of what they need to watch for, what they need to report back to the doctor about, what they need to be cautious about. It's a fine line between paralyzing a parent with panic and sending them home so nonchalant that they don't come back when the child gets worse.
Yes.
I'm a profound believer in biological education. I only wish our kids got more of that.
In what way? I mean, develop that thought just a little bit for me, would you?
Well, I think that with a sound foundation in biology, then kids are prepared to understand about their own bodies, about the disease that can affect them. They're able to understand reproduction and its consequences. They're able to understand about their health care. But it has to be based on understanding about biology itself. You can't start on it out of English Lit. You have to have some idea of, breathe in, breathe out, the blood goes round and round and so on.
Well, you're speaking now of sex education and all of the ramifications of learning about what goes on in your body.
But I think it needs to start with understanding the biology of life, and that this applies across the board. And that prepares us, I think, to understand ecology and the environment and so on. But unless our kids in school are learning about life biology itself, they're not equipped to handle the rest of these concepts on a sound basis.
Are they?
I hope they are. I was lucky enough, I think, to get good grounding in it in high school.
You've worked on, or you've been a part of the Easter Seal Society, too, and that, I know, is something you've been given a lot of credit for. What was it, the accreditation of rehabilitation facilities?
Oh, yeah. I was working as a volunteer for Easter Seal for quite a number of years. And it was just fortunate. I happened to be in the right place at the right time, even though I didn't quite understand what I was doing. We were building our hospital, or had started developing our hospital in Marin at the time. For a long number of years, we were just an office practice here, and we didn't have a hospital. But as we started to develop a hospital, we also had to learn about accreditation and quality assurance and things like that, and which was kind of going past me in a dim fashion. And but it turned out the Easter Seal Rehabilitation Group had to develop their accreditation protocols, and so I had enough vocabulary I was gleaning off the hospital stuff that I sort of helped draw up this thing, and it was involved all these fine things we learned about, and this was 20 years ago at least, about goals and objectives and measurable outcomes and so on. And I had the vocabulary. I didn't have the understanding, but I had all the right words, you know.
That's the first step. That's okay.
Right. Oh, yeah.
That's
Well, you
okay.
have the right words, you can fool accreditation committees every time. So we got it all down on paper, and actually I think we were the first Easter Seal Society to get accredited, and we were kind of a prototype, I gather, for a lot more. It was all this vocabulary I was filching out of the meetings for the Kaiser Hospital.
We've talked about your various interests and the fact that you know a lot about a number of things. Filmmaking is one. I heard you just a little while ago talking with people here about getting equipment so you could transfer your film to videotape. You want to do it yourself. You don't want to farm it out. What have you done in the way of making films? Medical films or entertainment?
Yes, actually we started outside of just ordinary home movies. We started with medical films. This is all really my husband's work. Jim was trained as a cinematographer in the Air Force in the Second World War. And he had the concept about a good 15 years before it got to be a popular idea of developing in waiting room films for patient education.
Okay.
And unfortunately, like a lot of things Jim did, it was about 15 years before anybody else got interested in this. And so we started in on this. Actually, he started in on it. Of course, I had to tag along.
Sure.
And so he did the filming. We both worked on the scripts. And I turned into being the editor. Jim did all the titling until he got the idea that we should do some printing to print the titles properly. And so he came home from the library. I'm also a firm believer in public libraries, with a little book on how to do set type and print at home.
So you started your own printing press.
So we that led. I took that up. That was mine, and so we wound up with a printing press and belonging to the Small Press Club of Marin, which is still a very active organization, though I haven't been active in it for some time now, to do the titles for the movies. We did either I think we did 6 or 7 films.
Now you mentioned your teaching at the University of California, San Francisco. There are more young women in those classes than there were when you went to school, I assume.
There certainly are. There are a great many more. As I retired in January and went over as a volunteer to teach in outpatient pediatrics. And then very recently, partly because they have been very short-handed, I was hired on to work part-time, still teaching outpatient pediatrics. So I work with medical students, interns, and residents, seeing patients and trying to teach them how to handle things. At least half of them are women now, and they seem like a really fine gang, too.
Do you find that you still need to encourage young women, not necessarily to take it up, but to face if there are any obstacles still there? Are we through all that, you know, or have women finally come into complete equality in the field of medicine, particularly pediatrics?
I think I think that they have reached equality in the sense of opportunities, and certainly in sense of their contributions. I don't think they've reached equality in the same sense they haven't reached equality in any other field in the ease of juggling the burdens of family life along with their training. But they're all bravely doing it anyhow.
These lead to all those nice summing up type questions of what is the thing that's happened in your life and your career and so forth of which you are the most proud. And I see a smile on your face and a little extra one when you talk about your children and your husband, your family.
Well, children and family, of course, are the greatest boon anybody gets. But as far as the accomplishment I'm most proud of, I think the proudest thing for me was to be placed in a position of being chief of pediatrics and leader of my group, first among equals we call it, and it's a kind of an interesting job being chief of pediatrics. You're a combination of a lot of responsibilities. You make schedules, you hold people's hand, you defend your department when other people try to poach on your perquisites. You also are responsible for all of the quality of the work of the department. You're ultimately the one who's responsible for that. You're responsible for the planning, the future, design. There's a lot to accomplish with it, and I was very proud to get the position, and I enjoyed very much doing it.
Well, you were one of the first pediatricians, one of the first two there, and then you became chief of the department.
And many years
after. How long did that take?
I became chief of pediatrics in 1978, and I started working here in 1959. Yeah. But okay. In between, among other things, we weren't big enough to have a department. Then early on, the person who was chosen chief, actually, I was foremost in promoting that he should have the position because I felt he was the best representative of us at the time. And he went on to bigger and better things, becoming head of the entire development of Santa Rosa Clinic and then hospital, for which he was well suited. But to be chief of the department and to be the leader of the department was certainly my greatest goal and proudest accomplishment. I was also the first woman chief of pediatrics in Northern California Kaisers, which was kind of nice too.
Yes.
Give me some wonderful dinner meetings. 13 handsome men and me.
Yeah.
Those odds I needed.
That's okay, you know, regardless, that's okay. It's so nice to know you. And I can certainly see why you were elected to the Marin Women's Hall of Fame. It's an honor for anybody, but I can certainly see why you're there in 1990.
I was surprised and, of course, proud to be nominated. I really don't see quite why I was there rather than the actually extraordinary number of accomplished and contributing women pediatricians we have in the county as well. But perhaps I can be representative of some of them too.
There were reasons, that's for sure. And I think for this conversation right now, we're certainly learning a lot. Dr. Callas, thank you very, very much for talking with us about what's going on. And I get the strong feeling that you're encouraged about the future of the family and what you have started. You see, if it just continues, would you make a philosophical kind of statement on the American family today?
I don't think any pediatrician who has the opportunity to many times a day to see the love between parent and child that's still present in our society has to really feel terribly depressed about the future of our children.